Right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So, earlier today on the Venereal Disease show, the BBC decided that they had no morals whatsoever and put a picture of a child who had lost her life along with her father trying to illegally cross the Rio Grande River in the United States. Now, of course, this is the Biased Broadcasting Corporation's latest attempt to smear Donald Trump because he does not want illegal immigrants to cross into the USA, and rightly so. We are lucky that we have a 24-mile wide border barrier. It's called the English Channel. If we did not have that barrier, Brexit would be even more of a shit show than it is already. We would have the left-wing media and communist parties over here doing the same shit CNN, MSNBC and the Democrats do regarding Trump's stance on illegal immigrants currently. Let's check out the first clip.
Today with a very upsetting and very shocking photograph, and we have decided to show it to you because it illustrates the desperate situation faced by many migrants and asylum seekers trying to cross the border from Mexico into the US. And we feel it's important not to censor the reality of what some people are experiencing. I'd like to warn you that it is distressing, and you may not want to see it, and you may not want children to see it either. The photograph shows the body of a 2-year-old girl, Valeria, with her arm wrapped around her father as they float face down in the Rio Grande, which separates the United States and Mexico. The dad, Oscar Martinez Ramirez from Salvador, had been trying to help his family cross illegally after failing to gain entry to the States. The Mexican president has called their deaths very regrettable. It comes as Democrats in the US House of Representatives approve $4.5 billion, that's £3.5 billion, in humanitarian aid for the southern border. It still may not happen, though, as it needs to be approved by the Republican-controlled Senate. The debate has been fueled by reports of children being held in horrific conditions in a migrant detention centre in Clint, in Texas.
So I'm going to start off by saying what the actual fuck, BBC. That is some pretty scummy shit, showing a dead 2-year-old girl with her father to push your anti-Trump narrative. That is a truly disgraceful thing to do, even for the BBC. Now, the whole point of this segment is because the Democrats have sanctioned a $4.5 billion aid package for the southern border. In other words, they want to pay $4.5 billion to help people illegally enter the United States. Well, it did not pass the Republicans anyway, but this show was earlier. And I'm guessing it didn't pass as they don't want to spend all that money on helping people who shouldn't be there anyway. I would say that that is a logical thing to do. But if you're on the left, then you're a fascist, and of course the BBC can't resist the kids being mistreated in detention centres shit. They got to get another dog whistle out there to the viewers.
We can speak now to Warren Binford, who is a law professor and children's rights lawyer, who visited the Clint Detention Centre in Texas. And it was last week, I think, Professor, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right, Victoria.
I'm going to ask you what you saw there in a moment and ask you to describe it to our British audience. But first of all, I want you to respond to the news that the bodies of Oscar Martinez Ramirez and his little girl have been found on the banks of the Rio Grande, and this image is now being published around the world.
Yes, it's just incredibly heartbreaking and tragic. I have interviewed a number of people who have described their traversing of the Rio Grande, and so I'm familiar with children having to cling to their mothers while the mothers cling to the fathers as they try and cross the Rio Grande. I also interviewed a young mother last year in one of the detention centers who described her 2-year-old being jostled out of an overcrowded raft crossing the Rio Grande, and the child being submerged under the muddy waters, so that someone else who wasn't even related to the family jumped in after this little toddler and was able to kind of grab onto her and lift her up out of the waters and pass her back to the raft, and almost died himself. So it's incredibly treacherous, and the fact that people keep coming and keep taking on these life risk, this high life risk traverse shows us just how desperate they are to come to America.
So the BBC bring on an expert who will support their narrative. No alternative opinions are offered, just their biased take on the situation. Now, Warren Binford, who is the law professor and children's rights lawyer, has not once said anything about the fact that these people have come over here against the fucking law. talking to criminals does not make people feel sympathy for them. These people have not only broke the law by illegally entering the US, they are also risking their children's lives in the process. The left should be more concerned with getting these kids away from the neglectful parents who risk their lives to illegally enter a country, not try to appeal to the British public's empathy towards dead children. These sick fucks have the moral compass of Ted Bundy.
I wonder what effect could the deaths of this man and his daughter have on America's immigration debate?
You know, I just don't know what it's going to take. There's no question that immigration is arguably the most divisive topic in our country right now. As you know, I've just returned from a facility in which children were being severely neglected and arguably abused. And there are still people on the radio station saying, well, these children, they came here illegally, or their parents came here illegally, so it's okay to abuse them. And I just don't understand, you know, how immigration can be so divisive for a country to the point that you think it's okay for children to be treated horrendously.
Okay, Shitweasel, do you have any evidence to back up the pretty serious claims you are levelling against these detention centres? I'm sure no one there is saying it's okay to abuse children, because once again you have shown us no evidence to prove your claims. Let's also be clear, the issue is not immigration, it's illegal immigration. There's a big difference between the two. A lawyer should know that.
Give our audience more insight into what you saw at that centre regarding the treatment of those children.
Well, the first thing that we saw was the sheer number of children who were being kept at this center. This is an adult facility historically that only had capacity for 104 adults. And then what happened was when we arrived there, they provided us a list of over 350 children at this facility. And when we scanned the list, we were taken aback by the number of very young children who were at this facility. Infants, toddlers, preschoolers, school-age children, over 100 of them.
Sorry to interrupt, how old was the youngest?
The youngest was an infant. So the youngest that I personally interviewed was 8 months old, and I interviewed her with a child mother. So it was a situation where both of them needed tremendous support.
So, sorry, her mum was how old?
Her mother, I believe, was about 15 or 16 years old.
Goodness me.
Yeah, so both children, both needing support and supervision, but no one here in this center, in this facility, was providing any kind of support to these children who were being held. Instead, these children were locked up literally in cells and kept there for 24 hours a day. Many of the children described having to sleep on concrete floors or concrete benches. Those who had mats described having to sleep 6 to a mat at times because there weren't enough mats to go around. Those who had beds, and there was a whole system for kind of, you know, who to allocate the beds to, that they talked about sleeping as many as 3 children to a layer in a bunk bed, trying to keep as many people off the floor, the cold concrete floor, as possible. They were fed hardly any food. The food they were fed was instant food, highly processed, Kool-Aid, and it was incredibly unhealthy. The children were dirty. They were filthy dirty. Their clothes were dirty. There was a lice infestation. There was an influenza outbreak. The children described hardly ever being able to take showers, hardly ever being able to brush their teeth, sometimes never being able to take showers, and sometimes never being able to brush their teeth, depending on which child we spoke to. And what really scared us about all this is that some of these children were being kept there for over 3 weeks. And keep in mind that these Border Patrol facilities are notoriously filthy and oppressive places, and everyone has always agreed that children do not belong there. And yet, here there were 350 children in this facility in the state that we discovered them.
So she talks about the amount of children there. Excuse me, is that the Trump administration's fault, or is that the Democrats' fault for encouraging these people to illegally cross the border? Then this complete cumbucket decides to spout the obvious bullshit that she interviewed an 8-month-old baby and his 15-year-old mother. How the fuck did you interview an 8-month-old baby, you demented seal? Did it laugh or cry, depending on the question? So if they said to the child, "Do you want a sweet?" it would laugh to say yes. And when she asked the 8-month-old child baby if it likes Trump, did it cry? What an idiot. We know lawyers love to talk shit, but oh my days, this woman is taking the piss out of the British public's intelligence. She claims they're being neglected because they're not eating Gordon Ramsay's 5-course fucking meals every night and the finest champagne. I'm sure any food is fine for these kids. I mean, they probably were travelling for how long with no food? I'm pretty sure any food would be fine. A bit of processed food's not going to hurt them. And let's be serious here. It would have to meet US food safety standards. So it would be no different to what the people of America are eating and what they would eat once they arrived in the USA. What the fuck are you actually talking about? How are they neglecting them, you moronic fuckpig? This woman has some of the most acute Trump derangement syndrome I have ever seen on British TV.
And where were the parents of most of those children?
42% of these children have parents in the United States, and they're coming to the United States in order to be reunited with their parents. Another 44% of these children have other family or potential guardians living in the United States, and they're coming to be with those people. It's really only about 14% of these kids who need to be in government custody, and so it doesn't make any sense to keep these children in these conditions for any extended period of time. They need to be with their families immediately.
After your visit, some children were moved, but over 100 children have been returned to that centre just today after being transferred.
That's correct. And so basically what's happening is the Border Patrol has released a statement and said that they want to use this facility to streamline the process of getting these children into what's called the Office of Refugee Resettlement custody. The Office of Refugee Resettlement is the department in the United States government that is responsible for caring for these children during the reunification process. But they report that they are overrun and they simply don't have enough beds available. And so they're leaving the children in the Border Patrol stations far longer than they're allowed to under U.S. law. Children are only allowed to be in these Border Patrol stations for a few hours and in no event more than 72 hours. So when we discover children who have been in Border Patrol stations for more than 3 weeks, we become deeply concerned, especially in the conditions that we witnessed last week.
Meanwhile, this $4.5 billion bill has been pushed through the House of Representatives for humanitarian aid. Is that welcome news?
Well, I think it's always welcome news when you hear that national leaders are focused on children and trying to provide support and adequate resources for children. But what I really challenge these leaders to do is to focus on the policies that need to be changed. It's time for them to really focus on the fact that we need to make putting these children back with their families and putting them there quickly a priority, because not only will it reduce the amount of trauma that children experience, but it actually will save the American taxpayers $1 to $2 billion a year at least to place them with their families much more quickly.
So those with family members, with potential guardians in the US, you say let those children in?
I say keep families together. Most of the children that we interviewed came across the border with adult family members, were separated from those family members at the border, and then are placed in these squalid conditions by themselves with no one to take care of them. So they should have been kept with their family member in the first place. If a child, for a reason that is outside of a policy reason, there should never be a policy to separate children from family members unless the child's being abused or severely neglected. And in those cases, the children need to be taken into protective custody and then placed with another family member as quickly as possible. But that's not what's happening. These children are being taken away from family members, reclassified as unaccompanied alien children or alien minors, and then they're being left in the Border Patrol stations for weeks at a time. They're being left in the ORR facilities for months at a time, and the entire process at most is supposed to take 23 days, and ideally it should only take a few days. We called the parents and family members of these children while we were meeting with them in the facility, and the parents were ready to get on the plane that day. They were willing to send money down that day to get their child into their home where they could care for them. And that's really what needs to happen here, and that's what I'm hoping that national leaders will start to focus on.
Thank you for talking to us. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Professor Warren Binford, who is a children's rights lawyer. Jennifer says on email, I'm absolutely disgusted with the USA. The treatment of these innocent children is very frightening. Emma tweets this: the picture of Oscar and Valeria is heartbreaking. People are fleeing for a reason. Where is our humanity? And Peter says this: much as the sad situation exists, it cannot be ignored that these people trying to enter the US are using children as excuses.
So the parents have likely entered the United States legally, and you're making the argument that children should be allowed to come over and live there, leeching off the American taxpayer? What world does this fucking idiot live in? Personally, I think any illegal immigrant should be instantly sent back to Mexico or whichever country it was they actually came from, and told to go through the legitimate channels. They should not be housed in detention centres. They should be kicked straight back out the fucking door. No fucks given. Her claiming they have other family there means nothing. Take the 15-year-old girl and her 8-month-old baby she spoke about earlier. They ain't getting no job and paying no taxes. They will need support, like the $4.5 billion that was asked for today. If they need to be with their families immediately, then maybe their family members should not have moved to America. This woman is failing to point out that the parents could have moved back to wherever they come from to be with their child rather than let them risk their life trying to get into America while breaking the fucking law. She claims they have been in these centres too long, but what else can be done when demented leftists like her sit on TV giving these people free rein to come to the US illegally? Why don't you put some of them up in your house if you care about them that much? So we see at the end there the final comments from viewers are 2 against immigration control and 1 who supports the rule of law. Great impartiality by the BBC as usual. So I'm going to end the video there. That was the most biased mass migration supporting load of shit I have seen in a while. Just let them in, they say. These people will have no idea about the economic and social implications involved with that policy choice. Now let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe as it helps the channel a lot. And also hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload a new video. I'll see you all in the next one.